Forget frequently asked questions,
common sense, common knowledge, or Google.
How about advice from a real genius? 95% of people in any profession are good enough to be qualified and licensed. 5%
go above and beyond.
They become very good at what they do, but only
0.1%
are real geniuses. Richard Jacobs has made it his life's mission to find them for you. He hunts down and interviews geniuses in every field: sleep science, cancer, stem cells, ketogenic diets, and more. Here come the geniuses. This is the Finding Genius Podcast
with Richard Jacobs.
Before we begin, a note from our sponsor. I'm Richard Jacobs, Executive Director of the nonprofit Finding Genius Foundation and host of the Finding Genius Podcast. In late 2016, I was rear-ended at 65 miles an hour by a truck on the highway, which sent me off-road into a ditch. The impact of the collision gave me a concussion and other injuries. At the hospital, a CT scan showed that I had thyroid nodules, which turned out to be cancer. It was then, when I had a biopsy in my neck, that I realized even if I was a millionaire, I wouldn't want a second or a third biopsy due to the pain and the invasiveness of it. And appointments at that time for thyroid experts were 3 to 6 months out. And I was worried about dying now, even if that was irrational. So because of this, I've decided to raise money to conduct a literature review on steroids, on the causes of anxiety and depression, a condition that affects well over 50 million people in the United States and hundreds of millions worldwide. Our goal is to create a codex, a guide that reveals all possible treatments for anxiety and depression for people that live with the condition, or for loved ones that have it, as my wife and my son do. To find out more about our fundraiser, visit findinggeniusfoundation.org and click on current initiatives. And now to our guest.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Finding Genius Podcast, now part of the Finding Genius Foundation. I have Steve Willis. He's known all over Australia, actually, as Commando Steve. He's one of the country's most recognized and respected fitness experts. He's been working in fitness since 2005. We're going to go into his bio a bit more shortly, but Steve, thanks for coming.
Oh, no, it's a pleasure, Richard.
Yeah.
Oh, a little bit excited to chat.
Well, good. Well, tell me about your background and your history. Like, have you been interested in fitness your whole life, or did something happen to cause you to be interested?
Yeah, no, I've always been, very physical as a youngster. I guess, like most boys, very hyperactive, and I spent a lot of time outdoors, at school playing sport. I think I was watching, back in the 80s. Here in Australia, what they used to call Wide World of Sport on one of the TV stations, and there was like Mr. Olympia, I think, and Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I was like, I want to be like that guy. And so I wanted to get into the gym and start lifting weights and training. And in my early teens, my parents allowed me to, and it was like a duck to water. I loved it.
Well, that's really cool. So how long have you been actively training yourself, and then how long have you been working with other people?
Yeah, well, I, from my teens, training in the gym, and I joined the army when I was 18, and I went into a special forces unit here in Australia, known as the 2nd Commando Regiment. And on top of everything that was kind of expected for that role, I also did my own stuff. And, I did 10 years in the military, and making the decision to leave, I was like, well, what is it that I enjoy? And, the training was a near dear friend to me. I had a good working relationship with it. So I thought, everything that I learned in the military, what I learned about myself through my own training, what better way to kind of live my life and be of service to others, and kind of continue that service from the military and, doing personal training and group training and kind of boot camps, which, kind of fitted the image that, in my own mind from the time I had spent in the military.
So what does it look like today, your practice? Are you spending most of your time doing like boot camps or individual one-on-one training? Is there any specialty type training? Yeah,
well, from being a trainer on The Biggest Loser, there's a profile. So I was doing a lot of corporate work, and I was traveling all over Australia. And then, as we've all been affected by COVID, that work evaporated. And I found myself kind of back on the ground in front of the troops, just the everyday person, the general public. And we were doing a lot of outdoor training because a lot of gyms and facilities were shut down. You couldn't do anything indoors. And I guess having a 4-wheel drive, a big truck and equipment, I just loaded it up and I'd take it to the park. And on a Saturday, Sunday morning, we'd have, at least 90 to 120 people, come through 3 different sessions, and then we started running sessions through the week, and like a whole new business was kind of born out of that. And we've the reason I'm sitting in my car is because we've just moved indoors, and it's the best way to put it is CrossFit, where my kind of flavor on CrossFit, and that's something that I've also done for a very long time, from the time I left the military. And I was one of the first CrossFitters, especially here in Australia, and I competed in the 2009 CrossFit Games, and I'm still, I think, the highest ranked Aussie. I finished 4th at the Games. So having an understanding of that methodology and group training and the military is kind of, it's been fun, been a learning curve, but also, being able to impart those skills and that understanding, into others, and for them to then have their own journey.
When you teach a group, how do you accommodate the different levels of fitness? Do you screen people so that you don't get like people that are really into it and people that are just, like almost at the point of death, just trying to do the exercise in the same group? Or like, what do you do?
Well, we scale and we modify, give alternate exercises. We, I guess over the years, doing a lot of group training and boots on the ground and meeting people for the first time and really getting to, like, having to feel them out in that moment. There isn't like any, pre-screening. I might have a group of 100 people, or I might have had a group of 300 on a beach, like a technology conference, and I've got to train, or just, run like a bit of a fun session on a beach. I've kind of got to get a quick understanding, and I've derived a little warm-up that kind of is yoga-based, and it gives me a good indication of people's strengths and weaknesses, their mobility, their range of movement, and then I prescribe from there. And I guess it's just years of cutting your teeth doing it and that experience. And I try to be as inclusive as possible. So we've got kids showing up that are 13, 14, training with us through to grandma in her, late 60s. And they all do, the same class, but we got the equipment that we scale. If people can't run, we'll put them on a bike or a ski or a rower or something, to lower the impact. Some might be using barbells, and then we'll give others, some light dumbbells or just some plate weights. People are doing box jumps. We might get others to just do some step ups or squat to a chair. Like, there's so many different ways in which you can prescribe exercise. And what I learned from CrossFit is it's relative, both physically and mentally. One person's stimulus is completely different to another's. And you just need to use the eyes in your head to observe that and do your due diligence and prescribe accordingly.
So what are some of the interesting differences you've seen? Are men a certain way?
Yeah, like men tend to be quite apprehensive.
Are there different ages that, where you see there's a huge difference in athletic ability or willingness? Like, what do you see?
Yeah, like I find that women in a collective, in a group kind of setting, are a lot more willing to step outside their comfort zone and try new things. It takes a lot of encouraging to get men to that place. And I think it's our pride, it's our ego. We don't want it to be tarnished or bruised. But then, like late 40s, 50s, people coming in, they're kind of over it. They don't really care whether people, are looking at them or not. They're not concerned. They've recognized that most people are so focused on themselves, they're not seeing anybody else. And what they tend to need more of is that mobility, is that range of movement, and working a lot of neural skills. So it's, whole impact stuff. It's that activation, and then, dial in the intensity a little bit as they become accustomed to it. And then the kids, they're a clean slate. Like a lot of them, it's more about the motivation with the younger ones, and it's encouraging them, because humanity's not as active as it probably once was. And, most of us nowadays, to be physically active, we engage with gyms and, group training or play sport. We're not out toiling, day in, day out like, humanity once did in a physical sense.
I've been in and out of shape at various points in my life, and each time I've stopped and then I get back into it, it's harder. And now I'm in my mid-40s, and it's definitely a lot harder to have gotten back. What have you observed with your own fitness, and again with the fitness of the people that you coach? Like, as people get older, how much slower do they need to go? What are some special things that they need so that they can get back in the game and not feel frustrated or want to give up?
Before we continue, I've been personally funding the Finding Genius podcast for 4.5 years now, which has led to 2,700 plus interviews of clinicians, researchers, scientists, CEOs, and other amazing people who are working to advance science and improve our lives and our world. Even though this podcast gets 100,000 plus downloads a month, we need your help to reach hundreds of thousands more worldwide. Please visit findinggeniuspodcast.com and click on Support Us. We have 3 levels of membership from $10 to $49 a month, including perks such as the ability to see ahead in our interview calendar and ask questions of upcoming guests, transcripts of podcasts you're interested in, the ability to request specific topics or guests, and more. Visit findinggeniuspodcast.com and click Support Us today. Now back to the show.
I think there's always frustrations, and I think it's how you articulate that and help them to understand that you will feel frustrated because you're good at, maybe just because you're good at something doesn't mean you're good at everything. And it's through that practice that you gain those skills and that understanding. But the biggest thing is mobility, especially, people who come to us, late in their later 30s into their 40s, who haven't been doing a lot, doing a bit of a flow, some downward dogs, some cat cows, working some thoracic rotation, doing some pigeon type stretch, all this stuff, again, derived from yoga to just help mobilize and free up the body. It's like taking the handbrake off so that, in a workout as such, you move more efficiently and effectively, but then that increased mobility and range of movement you take into everyday life. And that's where it's most important, not just in the gym. It's all about, harnessing and enhancing everyday life so you can just show up, a better version of yourself.
Yeah, I think one exercise that I think would be really good for people to do is to lay down on the floor and stand up, lay down on the floor and stand up. And if you can do that 10 times and you're anywhere like 40 plus, I think it's probably like...
Yeah, I agree with you. Something like that is, and that's right. It's more around movement. And I think we do get caught up in the complexities of things, and we think that it needs to be something more than it is, when really, as you just said, just setting a task and asking yourself, to complete a number of repetitions in a given time, or just a number of repetitions, and then reinforcing that consistently. That's what's important. And then it's through that practice you become more refined and you understand what it is that you're doing better. You also understand yourself better. And mental well-being and health and everything is at the forefront of where humanity is nowadays. We're talking about it a lot, especially here in Australia, and anxieties and stress. And the mind is a hard thing to control, but one thing that we can better control is our bodies. And it's through that, I guess, means, or that avenue, that we can reach further into our mind and understand ourselves and have a better relationship. And then, it opens the door to many other things.
Depending on the age of the person or their circumstance, like what are realistic goals for various types of personas of people, and what are not realistic that you've observed?
Yeah.
Like if I'm 50, what would be reasonable goals, and what would be like, I don't think you're going to be able to do that for a while, versus someone that's 20 or 70 or whatever.
Yeah, like it's, I guess it's the participation, maybe it's competitions, someone that's in their late 40s, 50s, come to you and they're looking to, maybe compete or do a marathon or go on a triathlon, something along those lines. And it's like, well, there's a solid, year, 12 months of training and practice that needs to go into place there to make sure that, your body and your mind is prepared for what it is that you're going to go through. And again, a lot of people, it's at that age group that haven't been active is gaining an understanding of themselves and what is required. And that can be quite agitating for people because they observe others and they want to get after it. But, the recovery side of things, that mobility, that range of movement, as we get older, it diminishes quickly if we don't practice it daily. And it's having those conversations with people, helping them to understand and kind of lower the obstacles so that they put the practice in and encouraging them to do more in their own time, not just like when they're in front of a trainer or in a group class.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
So the people that are successful, the ones that are starting from a disadvantage, or they're older, or, they're super out of shape, like, what have you seen are the hallmarks of their success? Why are the successful people successful and the ones that are not?
It's a switch. Something changes within a person and there's a dogged determination. You've got to become relentless, with your physical activity, with your nutrition, and with your approach. And that approach is a mindset. It's having structure and routine. It's discipline. And even when you don't feel like doing something, you've got to be willing to do it. And I'm not just saying at an intensity level or, going for a run. It could be sitting in a squat. It could be, doing a stretch and holding it instead of 3 minutes, holding it for 5 minutes, holding it for 10 minutes, because the body needs it. You've got to really tune into yourself. And for those who haven't put that practice in, it can be quite challenging, because what it requires is for you to spend a lot of time with yourself. And many of us have spent many years distracting ourselves from ourselves with television, with food, with constantly engaging with different things. And all of a sudden, we've got to get to know ourselves better and gain a deeper understanding.
Yeah, it's weird that someone would be like that, but it makes total sense. I guess if you constantly are busy with looking at your cell phone or watching videos, or, if you never have a moment to yourself to think, I'm sure training forces that upon you, at least for the time you're training. And it's probably like a good mental break as well as a physical, exercise.
Yeah, I call it an active meditation, because, you'll have a prescription, a workout that, for us, we provide that, and we say, right, this is what you're doing today. And it encourages people to focus and you're more attentive to what's going on in the present moment. And then everything else kind of falls away, and there's that physical interaction. And then we take it into that next stage where we also at the end, and with like meditation or just mindfulness, get people to just sit and be still, with themselves for a period of time, and just work on encouraging that. And, over time, you see people take on those practices for themselves, and they recognize how just taking some time out to just be still, to just encourage yourself to not overthink and get caught up in, the stories you might tell yourself. You tend to not burden yourself and use up a lot of your resources, your energy unnecessarily, and therefore you've got more energy to put into the things that you enjoy and you're passionate about.
What kind of modalities do you do in training? Like you mentioned CrossFit. Do you do postural work or stim, or do people get massages afterwards? Like what are some of the modalities and things that you use in the workouts to help people?
Yeah, so again, in the warm-ups, it's very much those ranges of movement, breathing, just bringing it back to the fundamentals of breathing. Rather than using time as a means of measure, we'll hold positions for a number of breaths. So I'll talk to the class and say we're in downward dog, and all right, so we're holding this for 5 breaths, and 1 breath essentially is a 4 count in breath and a 6 count out breath. And if you do that, 5 times, there's approximately a minute, and then we transition. So you're just encouraging people to be more conscious and aware of themselves. Other modalities, we've got, the cardiovascular. So, we've got a lot of the concept 2 type stuff, and we do resistance or weight training. We incorporate Olympic weightlifting, even just with, like a dowel or some PVC. So it's light, so it's more neural. And then a lot of body weight or gymnastic type exercise, your push-ups, your squats, lunges, and the like. And then recovery side of things, again, stretching, static stretching. There's a lot of places, and where we are, there's a recovery center. So there's massage, there's floats so they can, go and do a float. There's sauna, the infrared saunas. You can do cold therapy as well for those who like to get in an ice bath and kind of test themselves and their breathing mechanics. So there's so many different things that we can do that just help to promote, an overall sense of well-being and health.
Are there like avatars of different clients you have? Like, oh, so and so is the this, and so and so, oh, they're like, do you classify people into different groups that you've observed over time? Like, people tend to fall into 3 groups or 5 groups or whatever.
Yeah, no, not particularly. But we do have like the class larrikins, or the clown essentially, who they're or I guess a better way of putting it is they're like Tigger. They're always full of energy and bouncing around and encouraging others and kind of leading by example in that way. And then you've got others who are quiet and, kind of keep to themselves, but they're very disciplined. And you can see that they're not just disciplined in the gym environment or the training environment, but in every other aspect of their lives. And I think, people have conversations before and after classes and ask one another about, the different things and how that they do in everyday life to kind of encourage, something. Some people, it's about weight loss. For others, it's about just dealing with the stresses of life better. And, we talk about that collectively, but also people have those micro conversations, amongst themselves, which is great because that creates community.
What have you observed that people really like about your training and leadership in particular?
I guess it's complete. It's not just about the physical aspect. We implement, around nutrition as well, and just eating whole foods and just being sound in that regard, but not to the point of where it's nauseating as such, and the mindfulness. So people get a bit of it all, and we discuss, and people injure themselves. They present with things. Training can bring up a lot of things that may have been there before, but because they haven't been doing too much, they're not aware. And we work with people to help them, overcome, different issues, in different areas of their life, whether that's a physical thing, whether that's, the stresses and dealing with kids and work, and just having conversations to maybe give people some, like a signpost, something else to kind of investigate and go after. And the one thing that keeps, us going is as our sense of community and inclusiveness, providing a safe environment. And when you do that and people feel safe, they feel welcome, they feel like they belong, that they're grounded. And when someone feels grounded, much like a child, being brought up, they're more willing to extend themselves and step into the unknown and challenge their own fears. And that's beautiful. That's to see someone, challenge themselves and lift a little bit heavier, or, go a little bit faster. Whereas in the past there was fear and apprehension. That puts a big smile on my face.
Well, that's really good. What's the future of your work? Like, what kind of changes are you making, or what kind of things do you think still need to be addressed that you're working on addressing?
For us, I feel we've got that community. I guess I'm fortunate, having profile and, being reasonably well known. What I'd like to see with the shift in how I've been doing business and getting this facility up and running is get this right, and then franchise or do a number of different ones in the major cities here in Australia.
Okay, well, very good.
Grow the community, like a bigger, broader community.
Are there certain groups that you feel like you're not reaching, or they're just they need more of a push than others that you want to address?
Yeah, definitely, man. I think there's still a lot of apprehension. There's a hangover of an old way of thinking, but you can see a shift coming, and men are a lot more willing to try different things, to engage, without their wives or their girlfriends holding their hand and kind of, giving them a push in a direction, because men's mental health and physical health, the chronic illness is still a big concern. And, I believe men need to be more willing to take care of themselves and not just kind of use the excuse of they're busy and, they've got to put food on the table and provide. You've got to be, you've got to do that due diligence and kind of do some self-reflection. I'm a father of 4. I love spending time with my kids, and I being active and physical and, being able to kind of get on the ground and roll around, kick a football, go to the beach means more to me, with my kids than pretty much doing anything else.
Yeah, you were saying that I was surprised by that, but men, they're more resistant to training? Do they feel like they can't do it, or do they feel like they don't want to do it, or they're too busy? Like, what are the excuses? I
think it's just a mindset. It's kind of been adopted over the generations. It'll be right. We'll you might have something that presents itself and just you disregard it rather than getting it checked out or recognizing that you need to make change, maybe change your diet or whatever. We tend to leave things until it's too late or too far down the track. It becomes something bigger than it needed to be.
Okay. For people in Australia, where can you serve them? Like, where do they have to be, or can you do worldwide? And how do they get in contact?
Well, I've got the Commando Steve website, so anyone, around the world can jump on there and check out what we're doing. Social media, it's all Commando Steve, and Instagram, Facebook. Jump on, shoot me a message, say hello, ask a question. I'm always up for a chat. Kind of hearing people's perspective on things, and challenging questions help you to grow. I love to. I'm a curious cat, and I love to investigate things and gain a deeper understanding. So it's kind of that knowledge and education goes both ways. And with the training that we do, we're kind of in the Sydney area, and we also offer Zoom sessions. So the live sessions that we run with people on the ground, people can also Zoom in and participate in those sessions online as well.
Okay, and then last question. So if someone hasn't worked out in a while and they're just afraid, they're afraid of hurting themselves or afraid of exertion or sweat or who knows, a million different things. What are some baby steps for people to take? Like, how do they get started with improving their fitness?
I guess that you got to move. Yeah. If you can walk, go out for a walk. If you got a dog, put it on a leash, go for a walk, work up to or build up to doing at least 3 30-minute sessions a week, and then progressively add from there. Increase your incidental fitness, work on, be more aware of, the little things. You hear about, if you're going somewhere, a shopping center, park your car a little further away and walk rather than trying to find a car spot, right next to the doors of the shops. Or your nutrition side of things, just work on eating whole foods, get those fruits and vegetables, things that are grown in the ground. If you're into eating your protein sources, have as natural a protein sources as possible rather than, the packaged type stuff, and make sure you get the fluids in and that's water. A lot of people rely on soft drinks and things that have added extras to it, whereas, plain water is good for you. The body needs it. And take some time out, for yourself. Work on being mindful, and the best way to do that is work some drills, or drills as such, but with your breathing. And there's some great stuff on YouTube, on Spotify as well. If you're on that, you can plug it in and just some guided like meditations or breathing exercises to just become more mindful and aware of yourself. And you've got to be consistent. You got to make it a daily practice. And the more you make it a daily practice, the more refined it becomes, and you'll figure the things out that you enjoy.
Okay, very good. It makes sense. Well, Commando Steve, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it, and it's good that you're a beacon for people that want to get in better shape. It's possible. So, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Richard.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
You've been listening to the Finding Genius podcast with Richard Jacobs. If you like what you hear, be sure to review and subscribe to the Finding Genius podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And want to be smarter than everybody else? Become a premium member at findinggeniuspodcast.com. This podcast is for information only. No advice of any kind is being given. Any action you take or don't take as a result of listening is your sole responsibility. Consult professionals when advice is needed.